Welcome, Gemini, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 15th of April for the Ascendant, the Sun, or the Moon. On the screen now, I'm showing the event chart at the start of the week. The big takeout is your ruler Mercury continues its retrograde, but it is going to be meeting up with Venus this week, and that peaks on Friday. If there have been some crosswires with friends recently, some last minute changes of plans socially, or your work situation has been quite heavy and that's prevented you from interacting and networking as much as you would like, by the end of this week there's going to be a great opportunity to get together and reconnect. But also, this is a week which begins with a quarter moon. Now, the quarter moon for you is in house 2. The moon's in its home sign of Cancer, but the second house is about our values, can be to do with our sense of self-worth and money. Because it's squaring up with planets and influences in your 11th house, that's where you're most idealistic. There may be a situation this week where you just have to attune things a little bit. Perhaps someone is taking you somewhat for granted. Perhaps it's a friend who takes your generosity for granted, and that's something just to be mindful of. But of course, last week, Saturn did apply to Mars right at the top of your chart. If there were some heavy pressures professionally, or you had to deal with someone who put a big expectation upon you, perhaps just at a time when you're wanting to spend more time being a bit freer, perhaps even consider some of your long-term plans, that may have been a bit of a niggle. But as this week goes on, Mars does actually move forwards and escapes the clutches of Saturn. So I feel that some of that heaviness can make way a little bit. But of course, the big news story of this week is the conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, which comes on Sunday, the first for 14 years. And therein, a very complex part of your chart, the 12th house, but the Sun is going to move there also on Friday. And I don't think that's going to get so much coverage, to be honest, but it is really important because it squares up with Pluto, which is one of astrology's more awkward influences. It's possible that when it comes to your psychological situation, by Friday, and then the peak, the conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus on Sunday, that some sensitive strand or psychological matter, a revelation could occur. And that's because of Pluto being in the 9th house, your sister air sign of Aquarius. And the 9th house can be to do with higher truths, can be to do with a legal matter, could be to do with something that you would prefer to keep confidential. Pluto can be to do with secrets. The 9th house tends to push things into the open, whereas the 12th house can be an area where we encounter people who don't have our best interests at heart. So in traditional astrology, it's known as secret enemies. Because the Sun goes through this area for 4 weeks, I don't want you to think that everyone's plotting against you. It's just not as simple as that. When the Sun moves into the 12th house, essentially it asks us to review what else occurred in our life in the previous 11 months. So it's our time to really take a little bit of a check, perhaps be a little bit more contemplative, maybe withdraw a little bit from the amount of socialising that may have been going on for you recently, despite those occasional crosswires with Mercury's retrograde. So if you do want to invest more in personal development or go on some kind of retreat, go for some healing, see a complementary therapist, that kind of stuff will really work well for you over the next month. It's just the Sun squaring with Pluto is essentially about power. And someone may have a determination to impose their power upon your situation. So, for example, if you're discussing a financial matter to do with your work, you must prepare yourself that the response that you could be about to get might not be particularly fair, even though the 9th house is where we would like things to be fair. But it could be that you're dealing with the politics of a big organisation. Maybe it's a smaller business and the financial reality of their situation could in some ways come into your situation. So as much as the 12th house can be a very positive area, it can reveal things that are a bit awkward. And because Uranus is a very restless, provocative, nerve-jangling influence, and it has been for you for 5 months in 2018 and ever since March 2019, aggravating your 12th house. Sleep has probably been more difficult to come by. Maybe you felt a little bit on edge at times. Maybe there's been things to do with your past that have suddenly come up and been rather disruptive. Maybe your own nervous system has felt stretched out at times. So what does Jupiter bring to the equation? Well, Jupiter can be about knowledge, and it can be about the spiritual dimension through its rulership of Pisces. If we're thinking about Jupiter in terms of the sign of Taurus, it can be linked to money and growth. So the opportunity here could be growth around how you think about your psychological situation. Or the 12th house can be the sector of culmination. So it may be past skills and experiences that you've gained that you reapply now in a fresh way, Uranus, innovation, but actually gives you some kind of return, Jupiter in Taurus. So there are things to gain from that particular influence for sure. But if you have been feeling a bit rocked around by Uranus over this last 5 or 6 years, I think Jupiter's saying the more you can read about the psychological domain, the more you can bring that part of you into the whole part of your thinking, the more that you're going to actually gain a lot from this next month of the Sun going through your 12th house, but also that combination of Jupiter and Uranus. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Gemini. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great week. If you've yet to subscribe, we've discovered that 55% of my viewers are not subscribers. So we'd be very grateful if you did support the channel by clicking or tapping that bell notification symbol.